Hokie hangover. Michael has joined me this evening. Andrew will not be able to make it, unfortunately. Andrew is enjoying a family trip to the Outer Banks, so he's not available. Mike, you got any Thanksgiving plans?
All local.
I've got family coming into town. My dad and stepmom will be here in a couple days, so we're looking forward to hosting for the first time. My wife and I have not been able to host a Thanksgiving yet, so it'll be quite the experience. Um, let's talk about this game. Virginia Tech played Miami this weekend. It was senior day in Lane Stadium. Tech ends up losing this game 34-17, which if you had plus 18.5 in the pick'em,
That came home, baby.
we needed that one. I am now 1 point back from last. So we are firmly in contention to get out of the cellar. Um, Mike, Virginia Tech ran the ball for 194 yards in this game and lost by 3 scores.
Yeah.
Not a good recipe. From your angle, watching from the couch, what did you see?
First of all, for those of you listening live, that we're hoping that we would start at 9:15 this evening. I have I don't want to say I was gonna say I have a 3-year-old to sell you, but that sounds really bad. I have a I was trying to go with the
You would never, Mike. You would never.
The lakefront property in the middle of Kansas to sell you, whatever. Yeah, got a 3-year-old sleep regression thing going on with potty training, everything else. If you're a parent, you understand that this stuff kind of happens. What did I see from my couch? I saw a team that was a lot better than the home team. It's what I saw, truthfully. I think this was really a matter, and I thought that, Virginia Tech played hard in this game, all that stuff like they've been doing all year for Montgomery. So that's not, effort is never an issue with this team. It hasn't been since Montgomery took over the interim position. We talked about the Old Dominion game, how the team had seemingly quit under Pry. We hadn't really seen that. It was a matter of like the team had just been playing hard and hadn't been very good. And ODU, it looked like they quit. Since Montgomery took over, they have not at any point at any stage of this season looked like they have quit. They've played hard. It just hasn't been, interim coach situations hasn't been great. It was the same thing Saturday. I mean, I think if you look at the way the fourth quarter went, right? Pop comes in off the bench. Drones gets dinged. Pop comes in off the bench. He throws that bomb down the sideline, and then they go in and score and then recover the onside kick. It's like, okay, like this is a team that's not quitting against a Miami team that has playoff aspirations that could very well make the playoff potentially after what Georgia Tech did last night. It's one of those situations where I thought Tech played hard. I thought
Well, I think we may or may not have lost Michael. Let me see if we can get him back. Until Michael comes back, you're going to see a very large face of mine. However, I'll give you my take on this game real quick while we're waiting for him. Virginia Tech just got outclassed in this game, I think, from start to finish. The Hokies just did not have enough talent, and I think that was the huge thing in this game. The defensive backfield really had a rough day. Malachi Tony was destroying them from start to finish. Tony ends up catching 12 for 146 and a touchdown. He was open for most of the game, and that was something that Virginia Tech just could not handle. The defensive backs. Welcome, Mike.
Sorry.
I took over there for you, talking about how the defensive secondary just could not keep up with the weapons on the outside, and it, in the early going, it seemed like it was Miami was establishing the run and then taking shots behind the first and second level with some pretty wide open receivers. And then by the time they got through the first quarter and through the rest of the game, Carson Beck was just kind of taking whatever he wanted, especially on third downs, and just had guys running open against man-to-man coverage.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. It's like they had it was a dude's problem for Virginia Tech in the
Yeah.
secondary and just defensively. And what ends up happening too is when you're totally unable to throw the ball, right, which Virginia Tech for large stretches of this game was having a really hard time doing, you put a lot of pressure, right, on your running game. And when that gets slowed down at the very least, because I thought Tech did a pretty good job running the ball here, obviously, but when the running game gets slowed down a little bit and Miami's defense gets off the field, you're putting a lot of pressure on your own defense to continuously get stopped. So when you have a dude's problem to begin with, like Malachi Tony, he's done this to a lot of teams this year, right? But 12 for 146,
He
obviously
may
had
be
that
the best
150.
player in the conference, Mike, as
Yeah,
a
I mean,
as a true freshman.
there's argument to be made at the skill position at the very
Yeah.
least. Yeah, he's a stud, and you hope to slow him down a little bit. He's been doing this to teams all year, right? So it's not like a Tech exclusive thing. He's been unbelievable as a freshman, and he's lived up to every bit of the billing. As he was one of the top recruits in the conference, one of the top recruits in the country coming in. But he was unbelievable yesterday, without a doubt. So
Yeah, and then I felt like for Virginia Tech, they did a pretty good job scheming some runs open. Hi, Kate.
Ricky says hi. Ricky says hi. Ricky. He's like, hi.
Tech did some good stuff in the run game pretty much all day long, and it felt like they were able to get some of those outside runs going, something we saw a lot of last year and something we saw parts of this year, where Tech really started to just pound the perimeter and get guys on the edge. And Miami was struggling to stop that. And truthfully, Miami struggled to stop the run all day. But when you don't have a passing game that you can rely on, all it takes is one play where you don't get 3 to 4 yards and you've ruined the drive.
Right.
Because it is really hard to move the ball on the ground, and that's the only way you're moving it. And unfortunately, that's where we're at with Virginia Tech. This is the best way that they can move the football. And look, they do it pretty damn well. If you exclude sacks, they were well over 200 yards in this game. Kyron was under pressure for a good chunk of it. This offensive line continues to excel in run blocking as they have for the last several weeks and struggle in pass pro.
Yeah.
And that's going to have to be something that's rectified this offseason, whether it be with Matt Moore or a new offensive line coach. But this offense just doesn't have the firepower, Mike. And it is interesting to see Pop Watson come in and immediately get a ball over the top into Aiden Green, which was nearly a touchdown. And I don't know if we're going to be seeing someone pop in against UVA. That there was a question from David Teal about whether Philip Montgomery might put a package in for Pop in the UVA game. I don't buy it. I have a feeling that Drones is going to play if he's healthy, but it was interesting to see that the second that they got Drones out of the game, Virginia Tech was able to pop one.
Yeah, and I mean they were in a position where they kind of had to take shots anyway, just because of time and score. But the fact he was able to hit on a deep ball, and then next possession he hits on a crosser on a very nice throw. So fans, look, two different things here, right? Fans tend to get swept away by like the really good stuff in a small sample size, and we've talked about this before with Pop in particular. I don't think there's nothing wrong with going with Pop against UVA. Like that would be fine. What do you have? It's kind of like a what do you have to lose situation. It's been like that for a while though, right? Like if they had comfortability that Pop could lead the team, lead the offense for 4 quarters of the game, they probably would have gone to him already. The fact it's been essentially two different offensive coordinators, right, in Bowen and Montgomery that have said, no, this is Drones' show. The fact that Montgomery took the head coaching job over from Pry and said, no, we're going to stick with Drones, I think probably tells you a lot of kind of what they're seeing in practice. And I think the issues that we've seen with Pop in his, again, relatively small sample size between last year and really like Saturday because he hasn't played much this year at all,
Yep.
is there's a pocket awareness thing with him, right? That when he's playing more snaps kind of comes to light. But Virginia Tech hasn't really had a semblance of a passing game all season. And so when Pop comes in and he completes 2 of his 3 passing attempts, and they're both very, very good throws, like high level throws. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, the one he threw to the boundary is a 10 out of 10 throw and obviously a great catch. And then to hit Isaiah Spencer on the crosser on this like layered throw, which is not, I mean, he was open, but you had to drop that in, between linebacker and safety. Those are things that are going to stick out to fans that haven't seen a passing game all year. I can understand why fans are kind of clamoring for more of that because we just haven't seen it. So I think Tech fans are going to get a little. It's a 3-8. Look, they're 3-8. They're going to this UVA game. This is essentially like year 1 of Pry, which is what it would have been. It would have been 3-8 going into UVA. I think that this is going to be a fan base that obviously wants to beat Virginia very bad, wants to keep the Who's out of Charlotte for the ACC title game. I think Virginia Tech fans are going to show up to this game in Charlottesville. And I think that if Drones is the guy and doesn't play well, they're going to be clamoring for Pop Watson. They're going to want him to play because Tech fans want to win this game very, very bad. They opened as a 2-score underdog. I don't know what it's at now. Ricky, I saw like 11.5. I'm sure it'll come down a little bit, but I expect Virginia to close. Yeah, I expect Virginia to close as more than a touchdown favorite. But I think that could get inside 10. But, Tech fans feel like UVA's been overrated all year. I get that. I've said it, that they've been kind of getting away with it. I've mentioned it on my ACC pod. But I think they're obviously a much better team this year than Virginia Tech is. But that doesn't mean the Hokies do not have a chance in Charlottesville next weekend, especially with how this rivalry has gone the last 2 decades. So
still 11.5 according to ESPN.
Still 11.5. Yeah. So we'll see if that gets inside 10, but I think a lot of people expect Virginia to win this game. They probably should, but Tech fans are going to want to see Pop Watson, especially if Drones comes in, Ricky, and is ineffective in the passing game. But I think Tech can run on UVA, though. Like with what we've seen out of Virginia's defense, they can run on UVA. So that's another part of it, right? If you feel like Drones gives you a little bit more in the running game.
That's the crazy part about this offense to me, Mike, is that Virginia Tech is easily. I'm pulling up the stats for the country right now. But Virginia Tech has been running the football at a high clip almost all season, and if you go by yards per game, they're 31st in the country in rushing, and yet they still struggle so much to move the football and score. And part of that's the passing issue. The other part is turnovers, which we saw Pop Watson coughed up a fumble with late in the game. And the other part, Mike, is penalties, which has been a constant problem for this team. And unfortunately, this is an offense that just has not been able to get out of its own way. If they could, refrain from some of these boneheaded plays where they're either giving up 3-yard losses or they're struggling up front or giving up penalties and whatnot, then maybe Virginia Tech could sustain some of these longer drives where they're able to run it for 4 or 5 yards a carry. And unfortunately, when you run it for 4 or 5 yards a carry and then you have those plays where you get stopped for 0 or you give up a 2-yard loss, that's been a backbreaker.
We lose Ricky. I think we did. I'll finish his thought for him. We're off to a hot start tonight. Now both his internet and my internet have dropped. I totally agree that of what Ricky was saying in terms of it being a backbreaker when the offenses run the ball really well, right? And then you have the negative plays, and we've dealt with the negative plays, whether it be penalties, whether it be sacks. Let me see what Ricky, I was telling everybody that I would take over for your thought. It was only fair after you took over for mine a couple of minutes ago. I
We
agree
just
to
have
what you
the
were.
worst internet connection of all time tonight.
We're on fire tonight. I was just taking a look and to see what Miami finished with 9 tackles for loss to complete your point there, and 5 sacks. So when you have those negative plays, like you said, and you have a team that's really struggled to move the ball through the air, it makes it near impossible to consistently move the ball down the field, which is what we've seen all season. But it really comes to light when you're playing a team as talented as Miami, and I think that's what we were both thinking coming into this game. I know we didn't. It's been so much of the talk coming into this game this weekend was about James Franklin for obvious reasons in a lost season, and our preview pod the other day was mostly around Franklin and his press conference and the welcome of James Franklin, and that consumed most of the pod. But like, that was what was going to be the issue here. The issue was going to be, can Tech consistently move the ball, and can they get enough chunk plays through the air to keep this game competitive? And very similar to Louisville, right? The Louisville game, it was going to be similar, but on a bit of a smaller scale because of Miami's talent level. Even though Miami lost to Louisville, Miami's talent level relative to Louisville's, right? And what you were playing against here. I thought, Ricky, the one thing we've kind of semi-mentioned in terms of just Miami's offensive output, but haven't explicitly said, Carson Beck was unbelievable. Like, he was really freaking good. He had 4 touchdown passes, 5 incompletions, threw for 320. I thought Tech's defense did a pretty good job stopping the run, or at least slowing it down.
12 for 12 in the early part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, didn't have an incompletion till early second quarter or something like that.
I think it was late second quarter.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was really, really good. And Miami figured out pretty quickly that Tech could slow down the run. They could not stop the pass at all. And specifically, obviously, could not stop Malachi Toney, which we've already mentioned. So,
one thing on defense that I felt like I was noticing, and then I feel like yesterday confirmed it for me, was Virginia Tech kind of has made Noah Chambers one of their starting backers. Jaden Keller, Caleb Woodson, they're not seeing the field a lot.
Yep.
And there was a point actually where Caleb Woodson was involved in some sort of after the play kerfuffle, and somebody, I think, got him after the whistle, and he had to be restrained quite seriously. Actually, he probably would have gotten himself ejected. Which this game was very chippy from even before the kick. Miami was chirping the second they ran out in the field, which no surprises there. But Noah Chambers, Caleb Spencer, I feel like have taken over as the starting linebackers. And as that's happened, Mike, it feels like some of the run fit issues they haven't gone away, but they're not as prevalent.
Right.
And this defense, while they still give up some yards on the ground, it doesn't feel like they're giving up those big home runs as often. And more of the issues have been in the secondary, where Virginia Tech is playing a bunch of guys that don't have a ton of experience back there anyway. So I think Noah Chambers has kind of carved out a role for himself next year if he wants it. I'm sure that James will bring in multiple linebackers. Yeah. But I can imagine that Chambers will at least be given a shot to earn a spot in the rotation and maybe start next year, given what he's done. I think he's still got some work to do in coverage, but him and Caleb Spencer both made some plays in this game. Chambers was tied for the team leading tackles, and Caleb had 2.5 tackles for loss.
Yeah, and you can recruit you can recruit all you want, right? Like, this is going to be, first of all, I mean, we'll talk about the recruits in a second, like who came to campus on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, they were there today too. But who came to campus this weekend, and then the work that Tech's going to be doing in the transfer portal in January. We can get into all that. But I think the one thing that's apparent is that you do have to have some players stay, right? And I think the ones you want to stay are the young guys that have flashed. So Noah Chambers, Jeffrey Overton, right? Those are the types of players that you probably want to stick around to at least, even if they're not playing a role, an outsized role next year, if they can come in and still play and provide depth. And I think those two guys in particular can absolutely step in and play in bigger roles next year, just as we've seen as the year's gone on. They've played more. But those are types of guys I think you want to have stick around. Young guys, eligibility left. They've shown you a little bit that James Franklin can look at and say, okay, in a transition class, especially, can we get something out of these guys until not, I don't necessarily recruit over them, but until I recruit more depth, like we're going to need some guys who can make some plays in the meantime. So I think those two guys in particular are flashed.
You got to have enough guys to fill the roster. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't just wipe the slate completely clean. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday and earlier today. Tech probably needs to retain 2 to 3 players per position group, depending on the group, if they want to
Yeah.
field a full roster. And that means that there's a lot of recruiting to be done of this roster to make sure guys stay, but also that means there's going to be a ton of open spots, but you're not going to get 50 transfers in here. It's just not going to happen.
No.
It's not realistic. Now 20 transfers, reasonable, maybe upwards of 30, certainly I think is possible. So that means you need to keep some of the guys on this roster. And one of the spots on this roster I think that could be locked down for next year, honestly, is running back. Between what
Yep.
Marcellus Hawkins has done and the potential that Jeffrey Overton has, I don't think James Franklin needs to rush to go get a back. If there's one out there that you really like, then you absolutely go get him. But this running back room feels pretty damn good so far. I know that they're going to be losing a lot anyway with guys like PJ Prelude going, and unsure about Jeremiah Coney and whether or not he's going to be someone that sticks around. But if you can retain Hawkins, who's going to get some considerable offers elsewhere, Mike, given what he's done this year,
Mm-hmm.
and you can keep Overton, who one of the benefits of him playing at the end of the year is that we've seen what he can do, but one of the downsides that everyone else has seen what Jeffrey
You see
Overton
what he
can
could do. Yeah.
So there's a potential that Overton gets an offer elsewhere, but I think there's a decent shot that they keep him. If you keep those two guys, that could be your starting and second running back next year.
Yeah.
And
And I
that
think
would
you'd be fine
be
with
a
that.
good group. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go win games with those two guys. Now they need help around them, but you can go win games with Hawkins and Overton.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And I agree with what you said about the transfers as well. Like even Florida State, who's been I'm just using them as an example. They've been really transfer portal heavy, especially
Yep.
the year where they went 13-1. I mean,
Live and
even
die
they
by the portal every year.
right, right, and even in there, I mean, they've done it. We've seen both sides. Yeah, live and die by the portal. It's exactly right. We've seen obviously the upside, right, when they hit on everybody, and we've seen the downside, which is kind of what they've been the last couple of years, right? It probably isn't going to be quite as bad as it was last year, but they're now 5-6 trying to make it. They got to beat Florida to make a bowl game, and they can't afford to fire Norvell, so they put out a letter of support today. Okay, like even with their portal heavy roster, they're not bringing in 50 guys in the portal. They're bringing in 25 to 30 a year. So you're not. I could see Virginia Tech. This is going to be very portal heavy. Franklin has actually alluded to this in a couple different interviews that he's done that I've listened to, where he said, my approach is going to be, we're going to recruit high school really well, and then we're going to supplement with the portal. But he did mention also that might not be the case for next year's roster. Obviously, it's going to be a transition roster, might be more portal heavy. He said, but as time goes on, this is going to be very heavy high school and development, which I like. I agree with that.
That's what the elite programs do. Like if you look at Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, even Oklahoma, it seems like a good chunk of their rosters are guys that they recruited and developed.
Right.
And yes, they have starters that are guys that they transferred in, but the bulk of those rosters are guys that they recruited, and they supplemented that roster with fits that they found as transfers. And I totally agree with that approach. It's nobody's advocating for the approach that Dabo has taken, where you recruit high school players, and that's it. And you keep those guys, you keep as many of them as you can keep, and
Yep.
that's one way to do it. And I respect the approach, but I don't think that that's the most effective approach in modern college football. I think you're much better off trying to fill gaps in your roster, both at the top and in the middle, as far as depth is concerned, than also the opposite extreme, which is doing what Florida State has done, which is we're going to bring in 15 starters through the portal every year.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought Clemson up, because I think where they've fallen short, obviously, the talk and the easy talking point is they're not bringing in really any transfers. And I agree with that. They need to, they should probably look at the portal more to supplement their roster. But at the same time, they have failed down staff right now. Their two coordinators are good, like good coaches. Like Garrett Riley's a good coach. Tom Allen's a good coach. But if you look down the staff at like the position coaches, it's a lot of nepotism type hires, not as
I
far as
think
like
that's something we've
Dabo's,
talked about on the show
right.
before. Yeah.
Not as far as like Dabo's hiring his kids. It's more like Dabo's hiring
He's
guys who've
hiring
been
his
around the
alumni.
program. Taj Boyd is
Yeah.
like Taj Boyd's a good example, right?
CJ
In the
Spiller.
quarterback room. Yep. CJ Spiller, et cetera, et cetera. They've failed in continuing in developing their players almost as much as they failed in not using the portal. They're not developing the guys that are there. Like that's been kind of their issue as well. They're still getting talent, and that's why this has been a really weird year, but they've taken a step back, but they're still getting very good players, right? So they've been able to stay around that eight-ish win range. I agree with Franklin has a similar approach to Dabo, right? Obviously, Franklin's going to take more transfers than Dabo, but he's got a similar approach in that he believes that the core of your roster should still be the guys you're recruiting on the trail, which I agree with Dabo and Franklin's approach on that. But what Franklin has said too is like, I want to get these guys in, I want to develop them, but next year's roster might not reflect that. Next year's roster is going to be pretty portal heavy because we got to try to flip the roster quickly, which I agree with that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be reasonable for him to sign 25 plus high schoolers probably in this cycle.
Yeah, right.
He
Too
might,
short of a time frame.
He might get to 20, but I don't think he'll get any more than that. And he also understands that those guys are going to need time. They're not going to, most of those guys are not going to be able to play in year one, which means you've got to bring some folks in. And if you're armed with a shit ton of money, you might as well go shopping. And I think that's what we're going to see after the first of the year. Before we get into some recruiting and contract stuff, anything else on this Miami game that stood out to you? The officiating was horrendous.
The officiating was bad. I just know something. There is a football over my shoulder. It looks like it was strategically placed. My kid put that there on Friday afternoon when I was in here working. So that's
I don't know that we can see it, Mike, because your name graphic is blocking it.
Oh, no, it's right there by the television there. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's different. Maybe you're seeing it differently on anyway. Whatever.
I don't know. Wait, I can see it on the camera that doesn't have your graphic, but the one that has your graphic, it's blocked.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. Totally cool. The officiating was horrendous. This crew in particular, I will say this: we don't need to go into detail about every single call that was made or the inadvertent whistle that was blown. That was probably the worst of the call. I mean, there were several. Then we had to review it. The whole thing was a disaster. This ACC officiating crew in particular has been bad in several games I've watched this year. Like this particular crew has had some issues. So
Good
the fact
old
that
Tim Hedgepeth. What a name.
Not to be confused with Pete Hegseth, different guy. Yeah.
At this point, I'd rather have Pete Hegseth.
The officiating was really bad. It was really bad.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Anything else from this game?
No, nothing else. Big recruiting weekend. Why don't we?
Yes, it was. So this is not an exhaustive list, folks. These are just some names that I found in some kind of basic research of notable recruits that we know were visiting this past weekend.
And don't let it be lost on the listeners that Ricky's about to talk about recruiting. I will not let them forget. This is a big night here.
Yeah. For those of you that don't remember, I essentially swore off recruiting talk like 2 years ago.
Which I
And
think is a fair stance to take with how this thing works now. Like you got to get them the
yeah,
signing day, right? You have to more so than ever before.
here's
You have to get them to sign on the dotted line.
here's the thing. I'm probably going to be a little bit more in tune with it from now until February
Mm-hmm.
whenever the normal sign. I don't do we still do a second signing day in February?
We have the early signing day. There's only one, and then there's there's the early signing day that got moved up, and
Yes.
then there's another signing day and only one portal window.
Yes.
That's how
Okay.
it works now.
So,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you this, folks, like starting class of 2027, I am not going to give a shit about, oh, this guy's visiting. I don't care. Talk to me when he signs. Like I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I'll keep track of the rankings, right, to kind of get an idea of how things are
Yeah.
going. But
To monitor that.
I'm not following individual recruiting battles. It's not worth my time. Quite frankly, folks, I don't think it's worth your time. However, if that's something you want to get into, by all means, go do it. There are folks that do excellent recruiting coverage
Yes.
for
Yep.
Virginia Tech.
Yep.
And if that's the thing you want to get into, you're more than willing to
BT
listen to their
Scoop, baby.
content. And
BT
I'm
Scoop.
not
They're
gonna
good.
I'm not gonna get in the way.
They're good for things other than flight tracking. They can
Yes. They
they
didn't
can
even
cover
do that. One of their users did that.
that. Well, no, that's what I mean. The guy was made famous.
Yeah. Yeah, and he made a shit ton of money. Speaking of guys who might be making a shit ton of money down the road, here are some recruits that we knew were at this weekend to give you kind of how much of an idea that this weekend was big for James Franklin. Tight end Pierce Peterson, who's a 4-star. He's a current Penn State commit. Tackle Marlon Bright, 4-star from New Jersey, Penn State commit. Matthew, I'm guessing this is Lama, although it could be Lama. I don't know. 3 stars from Nokesville, Virginia, not too far from where you're at, Mike. I don't think.
Not far at all. Close for my
Also,
parents, but yeah.
also a Penn State commit. Kedrick Golston II, which was kind of a throwback for me as a former Redskins fan.
Mm-hmm.
From Ashburn, he's currently committed to Tennessee. However, he was there
And gave an interview, by the way. Gave an interview to VT Scoop where he said he was only really there to support his little brother. Okay.
Maybe we'll see.
Right. I mean, I'm sure he wants to honor his commitment, but that's until James Franklin opens up the checkbook.
Welcome
Continue.
to college football. Athlete Keith Nolan Jr., 4 stars from Ashburn. Roseby Labintus, 3-star offensive lineman from Jersey, who recently decommitted from Syracuse. And then 2 big names that you've probably already seen if you're listening to this live. Running back Messiah Mickens, a 4-star decommit from Penn State, from Pennsylvania. And then Matt Sieg, a 4-star defensive back, also from Pennsylvania, who is technically committed to Penn State, but is still taking offers, which this goes why I don't care about recruiting now until guys sign, because commitments don't mean a damn thing. If you're taking visits as a commit, you are not committed. Regardless, this was a big weekend for Virginia Tech. There was a decent crowd. I don't know what it looked like on TV, Mike, but it seemed like it was an okay turnout. Not great, but it was okay.
Yeah, it seemed. I mean, the television coverage of it was what you'd expect. They were doing the Enter Sandman, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Or as James Franklin says, enter the Sandman.
Well, he already said he fumbled that once. He won't do it again.
He did. He did mention that, and he also, the thing I do appreciate about Franklin so far is that if he doesn't know something like related to Virginia Tech, like he's already talked. He did that interview with Burn Up and Bill Roth, where he was like
level 7.
Yeah, level 7. It was very good, by the way. Go check that out. Mm-hmm. But he mentioned that he is going to have to lean on people like Roth and Burnup, who've been here forever, that understand that have the institutional knowledge, I think was the quote he used about Virginia Tech, that he doesn't have. Obviously, he knows the big stuff. He knows Enter Sandman. He knows Frank Beamer. He knows Bud Foster. Like, he knows all that stuff. Michael Vick. But the institutional knowledge of Virginia Tech is new to him. as you'd expect it to be. He's never coached
Yeah.
here. He had no outside of recruiting against Virginia Tech. He had no real ties to Blacksburg, right? So he's kind of learning on the fly, which I do appreciate that. But anyway,
Yeah. We'll have to teach him what a key play is. And the difference between a key play and the key play.
right?
Shout out to the key
Correct.
play guys.
Correct.
But no, obviously this is a big weekend, and we'll see what kind of commitments come from it. Franklin's got a little bit of time to work with. He has mentioned that they're planning on an additional set of visits next weekend while
Mm-hmm.
the team is away in Charlottesville, which is interesting. He also mentioned that he's got some guys already working there that don't have job titles, which I find interesting. Um, Not all that surprising because he probably, was able to get them some sort of temporary employment status or whatever to
Yep.
make sure they can get a paycheck. But he's already brought some guys with him. Some of those names have already floated around. I'm sure we'll get an idea of what that full list is as we get further down the road. But I am interested to see when some of these names start committing, quote unquote, and we'll see if they can actually get them in the boat on signing day. You're going to see a ton of more names, folks. So definitely keep an eye out on that. The more, the better at this point. Virginia Tech's only got a handful of guys that are committed to this class. Who knows how much of them Franklin wants to keep? It's not all that uncommon for head coaches to advise some recruits that their commitment is no longer accepted when a new coach comes in, which is just the reality of college football.
Yeah.
So we'll see if any of those guys bounce. But it's been widely reported, Mike, that Penn State basically leads the country in decommitments since James Franklin
Yeah.
was fired. And some of the guys that are technically committed to Penn State are still visiting. So there could be a kind of a built-in cadre of folks that Franklin is able to go ahead and get on the board and get on board, given that he's already built that relationship with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think most fans understand this. At least the ones that are listening to this podcast regularly are diehards, and they get it. Like, they understand how college football works. But there are going to be guys that are committed to this class, that committed to Pry, that are obviously not going to stick around for Franklin. And then there are some that will, right? And to your point, who knows how many of them Franklin even wants? We'll see.
And what other options would those guys maybe even have, right? At this
Yeah.
point in the cycle, they may not
Right.
have a choice. They
Right.
may be asking Franklin, "I'd like to stay, please."
Right. Yeah.
I would like my offer to still exist.
I thought I was getting this in NIL, and Franklin's like, no. He goes, well, I'd still like to stay. Yeah. This conversation is still going to happen. So there's going to be that. And then we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the Virginia recap, or, maybe if we do a season recap shortly thereafter. There are going to be guys on this roster that are, fans are going to want to see stick around, that may not, that may hit the portal and may kind of explore their options. And that's okay too. Even guys like, as much as I'd like to see an Aiden Green, a Jeffrey Overton, a Noah Chambers, as much as I would like to see those guys stay, if they don't, I get it. They didn't commit to this guy. I understand, right? It is just kind of the nature of the beast with the coaching change. And we saw it, right, with Pry. When he came in, it was kind of a very similar thing. Don't expect this team to be quite as bad as year one for Pry next year. Just a different time.
No, Brent Pry didn't have $20 or $30 million to put into his roster in year one.
He did not. He did not.
So I think if James Franklin goes 3-8 or 3-9 in year one, we have a serious issue.
We have some.
The good thing is, I don't think we have to worry about that.
Right.
But yeah, obviously the recruiting stuff is going to be very volatile over the next few weeks. You're going to see probably a flurry of commitments at some point. I would be willing to bet, Mike, that Franklin has already told some of these guys who their position coach could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably working on some of those deals behind the scenes, and that stuff will get announced probably after the year. For the record, I don't have any insight specifically in terms of inside reporting. I have some names that I've kind of come up with in my own head, but No inside reporting for me. We'll have to wait and see if I get anything. I may put it out or not. We'll see. Um, the only other thing, Mike, I wanted to talk about tonight before we get out of here is James Franklin's contract, which the Hokies released the contract details of Friday, right before I was about to head out and go to Blacksburg. There's a lot of details here, a lot of which I think is relevant and kind of signifies the overall broader commitment to the football program that Virginia Tech is making. The maybe the more interesting part about all of this, Mike, is the salary and compensation portion where James
Yeah.
Franklin's contract is significantly backloaded.
Yeah.
So for the remainder of 2025, he's making at a prorated $6 million, right? So he's whatever he would have made for the entire year at $6 million. That's what he's getting paid for the remainder of the year. $6 million will also be his 2026 salary. Same for 2027. It goes down to $5 million in 2028. And then in 2029 and 2030, it's 12.75 and 13.25. Given that the buyout from Penn State, Mike, was a lump sum, I do find
Mhm.
it interesting that he's taking a pay cut essentially for the first 3 years.
So I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show. I know I mentioned it to you and Andrew offline. I think I might mention it on my ACC pod. But I had heard before the Penn State buyout was negotiated to what it was, the $9 million lump sum. I had heard before that this was probably going to be in the neighborhood of like $11 million a year, which it is going to exceed that in the latter portion of his 5-year contract. Right.
Yeah. But an average annual value of just
But
over
average
8
annual
million.
value of just over 8, I think, is a testament to Franklin saying, I got my lump sum from Penn State and I want to build this program, right? And I want to be here.
Yeah.
This is I want to be here. I want to build my staff and put the money into recruiting type thing. I'm good on money. And by the way, the other thing that stood out to me in the contract, Ricky, too, is it was 2028 number is 5 million, right? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it goes
The
down in 2028.
Yeah. Ricky, there's a chance we might be living in a contract extension situation
Oh,
by
absolutely. I
2028.
mentioned, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so I think
Don't be
him,
surprised if these numbers change at all, even after year 1 or
yeah,
year 2. I
right,
mean, for those who remember Justin Fuente, he signed 2 contract extensions in 2 years.
both warranted.
So don't be shocked if this deal gets amended after year 1.
Yeah. And I think especially with Franklin's track record, if Tech comes out next year and goes like 8-4, for example, they're going to probably extend him. And then if he comes out the following year and goes like 10-2 and Tech's in the conference title game, he's probably getting another extension. You know what I mean? Because Tech's going to be more willing. They're not going to learn from past mistakes of Justin Fuente. They're going to just keep giving James Franklin, a future Hall of Fame coach. They're just going to keep giving him contract extensions to stay here. I hope everybody's prepared for that. That's what's going to happen here.
If John Rakovich and Jay Pearson and Whit Babcock and Tim Sands have anything to do with it, Mike, this will be the last place that James Franklin coaches.
Right.
Like he will retire in Blacksburg. So
they're going to go to the ends of the earth to keep this guy.
If Virginia Tech wins to any serious degree, right, 9, 10 wins, they're going to make sure that he's well compensated for that effort. And so will Jimmy Sexton, by the way.
Yes.
Sexton's going to make sure that his guy gets paid.
Yeah, Sexton will be coming back to the table halfway through year. If Tech's like 5-0 in mid-October next year, like Sexton's gonna be like, "All right, guys, we'll talk to you.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple
You want
months.
to talk now, or what do you want to? Yeah, we'll see you in a month." Or
a couple interesting incentives, Mike. There's an incentive for actual like per win bonuses, which I don't think is all that uncommon. There's also an incentive for TV ratings in the ACC, where Franklin only, not his assistants, but Franklin is due specific amounts of cash depending on where Virginia Tech ranks in the ACC viewership ratings. I don't know that I've seen that before in a contract. However, given that Virginia Tech, or excuse me, given that the ACC is now divvying up revenue based on TV ratings, I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm curious if any of the coaches that are newer to the ACC, like Jake Dickert, for example, at Wake is the one that comes to mind because they've had a really good year. I wonder if anything like that has been in his contract, given that this was new, right? This past offseason, and then he negotiates a deal with Wake. I wonder if that was in the contract. I expect it to be moving forward at least until 2030 when we have more clarity about what's going to happen for this conference. But yeah, I was not surprised to see that in there, given the state of things where we're at in terms of ACC revenue distribution.
As far as assistant money goes, Mike, 9.5 million due for his full-time assistants, an additional 6 million for support staff, and a $3 million recruiting budget. Just to give you an idea as to what those numbers are this year and how they're being increased, the full-time staff budget is going up 4 million. The support staff budget is going up by 2.6 million. And the recruiting budget is more than doubling, Mike. It was
Yeah.
1.2 million this year, and it's going up by 1.8 to 3, which, Mike, this is a lot of cash. And this is the whole point of this 40 plus $1 million that Virginia Tech is giving the Hokies in year one of this funding initiative. These are the kinds of things that it's going to.
And it's really important to note, like when we say recruiting budget, this isn't NIL. This is like recruiting operations.
This is recruiting expenses. This is flying. This is driving. This is meals. This is hotels.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Yeah. Significant.
Yeah. And also, like, visits, right? Making sure that you can fund a bunch of visits and making sure that you can give them a great experience while they're here. All that stuff is what's coming out of that budget.
Which is why he says stuff like, he said in multiple interviews, it has to look, feel, smell big time. Yep. This is what he means.
Yep.
When you more than double that recruiting budget, they're going to make sure that it feels big time, right? Even though Tech doesn't have, the facilities that Ohio State does, are you still going to have that warm and fuzzy feeling when you get to Blacksburg?
Yeah. And to be honest, Mike, that was my favorite part of his initial press conference.
Yeah.
I want someone in here that understands that you have to treat yourself like a big time program if you want others to treat you like that. You have to look at yourself and look in the mirror and say, do we take ourselves seriously? Should anyone else take us seriously?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, Franklin did not have everything he wanted immediately, right? Because it's going to take some time to get some of that stuff done. But I can guarantee you that those processes are going to be hammered out, and he's probably going to, lift and shift over to Virginia Tech, and to borrow a term from my job.
Yeah.
He's going to be taking what he did at Penn State, which was mostly successful, and replicating that with a couple tweaks in Blacksburg as far as recruiting goes. And I'm very, very encouraged by it. As far as the buyout goes, Mike, this is a fully guaranteed deal. So Franklin is due whatever his remaining balance is on the contract, which I wouldn't be very happy with if this was a longer deal, Mike, but it's only 5 years right now. I think that this is okay. Because let's be honest, if you're Virginia Tech, you're probably not going to be firing James Franklin until after, at the earliest, year 3. I don't see, and I don't think we're going to get to that scenario anyway. Matt Maciosi, friend of the show. No, Andrew, Alex, how shocking. As we stated in the early portion, Matt, Andrew is spending some well-deserved time with his family for Thanksgiving. But yeah, so it's a fully guaranteed deal for Franklin. So whatever he's owed is what he's going to get paid. if Franklin were to leave on his own accord, Mike, before July 15th, 2026, it's 8 million. Later that year in 2026 in December, it goes to 6 million, 4 million, 2 million, and 1 million. So if Franklin decides he wants to bounce in a couple years, he will not owe Virginia Tech all that much money. But are you comfortable with this buyout?
I am, because I think it's going to work.
Yeah.
So
They wouldn't be fully guaranteeing a deal for Bob Chesney.
Right.
And that's no disrespect to Bob
Correct.
Chesney. I think I've made it pretty clear that would have been totally fine with
Correct.
having him run the show, but he is not
Correct.
James Franklin.
Right. When you have a Hall of Fame coach who's done this at multiple places, you're not really as concerned about it not working, especially when he's telling you what he needs for it to work, and he has done that now at 2 separate places.
Yeah.
The worst possible scenario I think here for Virginia Tech is you get back to level ground. You're at like an 8-win floor. I think that's probably like the worst possible scenario out of this entire thing. Which I guess we haven't really talked about, Ricky, and we don't need to go like on and on tonight about this, but this kind of ties into the contract, so I think it's worth talking about. What do you think is the worst case scenario for Virginia Tech under Franklin next 5 years? The realistic worst case scenario.
This going really sideways ends up at 6 wins as the floor. I don't foresee Franklin ever bottoming out and just being completely inept.
Yeah.
But like if for some reason the recruiting just doesn't hit the same, or he's not able to get good assistants in here and they're not able to develop guys, or he has some game management issues, I think Tech probably lives in the 6 to 7 win mark again, which don't get me wrong, that'd be pretty frustrating considering all the money that's being put into this, but I don't think it's likely that we get to that scenario. Obviously, I think the more realistic floor is probably 7 to 8 wins. Even in a down year, Mike, I don't think that Franklin will probably dip below 8. I mean, it would have to be a confluence of events, right? Where your quarterback gets hurt and you've got a roster that just doesn't pan out for some reason. You have some transfers that don't work, and maybe you struggle and win 6 or 7 games. But I think on an average year, even if Tech is a little down, I think 7 to 8 wins would be the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
And then doomsday is 6 wins, I think.
I'm in total agreement. I think the biggest concern that has been alleviated because of how this coaching search was handled, but I think my biggest concern would be if there was an institutional alignment between Franklin and whoever his bosses are, right?
At which we still don't know, to be honest.
At which we really still don't know. But like, if there was not institutional alignment between Franklin, the board, Sands, whoever the AD is, let's just assume Witt, etc. But because of how this coaching search was handled, right? And who knows, Franklin could get in here and it could be like Fuente, and that he rubs a lot of people the wrong way internally, and then they sour on him. I don't necessarily see that happening, just because they're two different. The personalities are so starkly different. But if you get into if it becomes contentious in terms of Franklin thinks he needs more money to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not talking about year 1. I'm talking like year 3, year 4. I need more money to do X, Y, and Z. And you feel like you're held over the barrel a little bit because you're also afraid of him leaving. Maybe it gets a little bit more contentious. But if he's winning a bunch of games, I don't think that's going to happen. That alleviates a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at on this. And if there's any folks that are in the administration listening, which there may be, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to, act like we're the end all be all. If James Franklin, Mike, who is, as many people have already mentioned lately, a possible Hall of Fame candidate right now,
would be if it was done now. It's like 700 winning percentage, basically.
If he's telling you that he needs something, listen and do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. if there's anyone in the athletic department that doesn't want to follow what James Franklin is laying out, then all I can say is look in the mirror and and figure out if um, the problem is you. Now, if this goes sideways, right, and Franklin's saying, "Oh, well, 30 million from my roster is not enough. I need 40." Okay, well then maybe we can have a talk, right? If he goes out there with a $30 million roster and wins 6 or 7 games,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
it's not going to be very good. But if Franklin is averaging 9 wins a year, which I think is highly possible and maybe even likely that he averages 9 wins a year. Um, if that happens, Mike, you can't give him a blank check, but you can give him one that's pretty damn close.
Yeah, it
You
shouldn't
can
take.
you can add a 0 or 2 to the end of it and let him cook. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree, and it shouldn't take you long to remember what this was like before he got here. It's like, wait a minute.
yeah,
Think about the Old Dominion game. Think about the Duke game under Fuente. Like, you don't have to your mind doesn't have to wander too far before figuring out why you have to write this check to this guy. You know,
yeah.
and this he has not coached. He hasn't even gotten a single recruit like locked in yet, and he hasn't coached a game yet. So like this is all premature. But I'm just thinking through it. If he's going to do what you expect him to do, right? Which you're not fully guaranteeing the contract unless you expect him to come in and totally flip things, which we
This
all
is an
anticipate.
all-in move. We're putting all of our chips in the Franklin basket.
And I've mentioned this, Ricky. Like, if this doesn't work, then nothing's going to work. Like, I'm
Mhm.
going to have a really hard time sitting here in a few years if this doesn't work and like we're in a position where we had to fire him or something. I'm going to have a hard time sitting here and saying that it's just one of those things that just didn't work out. We'll be able to parse blame. There could be a trillion different reasons why things went really, really sideways. But I'm going to have a really hard time like blaming the search committee, for example, for hiring James Franklin coming off his Penn State tenure. I'm gonna have a really, really hard time doing that.
Yep.
That's what am I going to do? Blame the easy thing to do is always blame the school. It's
Yep.
like, oh, they didn't work out. Why did we hire him in the first place? I'm not going to be able to tell them that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I don't.
And you can't blame the board for what they did, right? The board is
No,
the
infusing
board
money
is
into the program and
yeah,
putting their best foot forward. No, like
yeah,
who?
and hiring the best coach on the market.
Right, right. So
So
anyway, those are doomsday. I agree with you. I think doomsday is like 6 wins. I
yeah,
think that's like because even Pry was. I mean, 2 of his 3 seasons, and I mean, well, I guess he's to blame for this mess this year, but in 2 of his 4, 3+ seasons, his worst year was taking Tech to bowl games. So that would have to be doomsday for Franklin.
yeah.
It just wouldn't bottom out like we saw this year in particular. And I give Pry a pass. We've mentioned this a million times. Pry gets a pass for year 1. It was just there was nothing
A
he could
good
really do about that.
a good comparison, Mike, if for like the doomsday scenario, it is potentially some of those Miami teams of like the 2010s ish, where Miami had a pretty good roster almost every single year and could never win more than 7 games, 7 or 8
Yeah.
games, and
Mhm.
they always played down, right? Everyone knew Miami had dudes on the outsides and had dudes up front, and it just did not matter. They could not win consistently. I think that if Franklin were to struggle here, it's because we would have come to something like that where we have talent on the roster and they just can't figure it out. And
Yeah.
again, I don't think that's going to happen, but should this go sideways, I think it looks something like that.
Right. It's either lack of alignment administratively or maybe there are some assistant coaching hires you'd like to have back, which I
Yeah.
think those are two. I think what's more likely is there are some assistant coaching hires you'd rather have back. If you asked
Yeah.
me 3 weeks ago, I would have told you it was well, if you asked me 2 months ago, if you asked me 3 weeks ago, we were already down this path. If you asked me 2 months ago, I would have said, well, the admin can't, they said that they would get money for the new head coach and they weren't able to do it. And it's been an administrative thing. Now, I don't think that anymore. I think the more likely scenario is he swings and misses on a couple of assistant coaching hires, which, by the way, I don't expect him to do. I think he's going to put together a really good staff. And I think he's going to put together at least the offensive and defensive coordinators, guys who have called plays before. I would be very surprised if he didn't.
Agreed. And you know what, Mike? If he does miss on one or two assistant coaches, I'm not going to break him over the coals for it. Like,
no,
as long as he is able to build out a pretty good staff and maybe there's one or two guys that Tech needs to move on from, so be it. That happens a lot.
And that's probably not going to keep you. That's probably not going to keep you from winning 8-9 games, right? It might just be a position group that's held you back from reaching your ceiling at that point.
Yeah. It may be what keeps you from getting to 10 wins or 11 wins.
Correct.
Where instead you drop some of those games you shouldn't be dropping, like Georgia Tech. Sorry,
I'm recording, Ricky. I'm recording with Joey here shortly for the ACC
podcast.
You?
Oh, dear God, I'm gonna have to listen to that.
Is there anything that you would like me? Well, I mean, of course, yes. Thank you. But is there anything that you would like me to? If you're a sicko
and you're going to be up tonight, make sure you go follow the basketball.
It's a holiday week. Who's working this week?
Technically, I am, but
I'm off. I'm off SI. Ironically, I'm off SI. Ironically, until Wednesday. Yeah. But yeah, I was just gonna say, like, there are some things discussed there with Georgia Tech, unfortunately, for Brent.
I think the interesting thing I'd like to hear from Joey is, like, I'd like him to describe the agony of that game. I think.
Yeah, I've already seen him tweet that this was one of the 2 or 3 worst losses of the Brent Key era.
Yeah.
Which I would agree. He put the Georgia game last year, went to like 1,000 overtimes as the first one, which hard to disagree. Rivalry
that's
game.
The thing, though, is like Georgia Tech wasn't supposed to win that one, and they almost won it. Georgia Tech was supposed to win last night.
I'm going to push. Yeah, I'm going to have that discussion with him. And he's a Georgia Tech fan. I just watch him agonize over it. So I'm not going to like totally disagree with him. If that's the one that feels worse, I get it. But to your point, this was one you like had to get to the conference title that you were favored in.
Speaking of ACC, Justin Wilcox.
See ya.
You're gone. Not at all that surprising. I know when Tech beat Cal earlier this year, I wandered into the Calgorithm a little bit to try and figure out how folks were feeling, and they were not happy.
No.
A lot of beef with Justin Wilcox, and as it turns out, there's been a lot of angst amongst the fan base regarding Wilcox for probably a couple years now.
When you lose your rivalry game by 3,
because what more do you want from Cal football? I mean, that athletic program is a mess.
Agree.
They've got like $7 trillion in debt. I mean, it's absurd.
I agree. The one thing I will say is, when you're favored by a touchdown and you lose by 3 scores
to Stanford,
to your rival, I get it.
With an interim coach.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't even think about that. That makes it even worse.
Like, Frank Reich doesn't even want to be there.
How about the Andrew Luck? Did you see the Andrew Luck sideline interview?
I didn't catch that.
He's mid sideline interview. So they had 2 fumble returns for touchdowns in the first half, and on the first one, he's mid sideline interview with ACC Network when they run that fumble back, which was hilarious. It was very, very funny when that happened. We lost Ricky. I'm just gonna vamp for a second. I guess I'll talk about our sponsors because I don't know if there's anything else we have to hit on. Counts Family Pharmacy, Home Field Apparel. Please support them any way you can. We talk about Jeremy's support with Counts Family Pharmacy a lot. So go support them, obviously. And then
we were so close, Mike. We were so.
I just said I was going to vamp. I just said I was going to vamp for a second, so I didn't know if there was anything else we had to say. So I just plugged our sponsors.
Yeah, big shout out to them as always. We'll get a UVA preview here soon. It is hate week, although it doesn't really quite feel like it. We'll probably have that for you guys Wednesday night. I think Andrew said he's going to be here for Wednesday night, so hopefully we'll have all 3 of us together. I would like us to get a kind of an end of year pod as well after the season. Hopefully, we'll have some fun stuff to talk about after UVA. But until then, folks, go Hokies.